So when we think about 15 to finish, it's the fun game changer strategy. It's the thing that really gets students and parents and first generation students. It's the thing that really captures their imagination to say, what does it take for me to graduate on time? And in order for us to save the most amount of money and to make sure that our students get to where they want to go in well-paying jobs and graduate school, is to make sure that they graduate on time. And that's the general theme and premise of 15 to finish. It's nothing real difficult to explain, as Kathy talked about. The reality is that 15 to finish is really about 30 credit hours within a year. We're talking about fall, we're talking about spring, we're talking about summer or mini-mesters, however you devise it to make it all about 30 credit hours. The reality, though, is that 30 credit hours in a year didn't sound nearly as sexy as 15 to finish, so here we are with 15 to finish. One of the things that we did when we're talking about 15 to finish is that we had the chance to pull together an institute this past summer in Minneapolis. And one of the things that came out of that institute was a clear understanding from all the individuals there was that 15 to finish is woven very much into every single one of our game changer strategies. It is the catalyst that moves the momentum forward. Making sure that students start on time and have that strong energy to push forward, it really begins with 15 to finish. And no matter which strategy you're working on, all of them include 15 to finish. So whether you're talking about meta majors or academic maps, or how do you help students define purpose, or are you creating a structured schedule for them? Our advisors making sure students are on time to graduate. All those things are 15 to finish. And so when we talked about this idea of 15 to finish, for me, it always makes me think about the work that I did on a college campus. It's about helping students set the bar. And I've shared this story multiple times, but it still resonates with me. Very simply, I went to a new student orientation session. The room looked just like this: parents, students, first generations, people that were looking to us to tell them, how do I do this? And I said, how many of you plan to take more than 12 credit hours in your first semester? And about a tenth of the room raised their hand. And then I asked, how many of you plan to graduate on time in 4 years? And then everybody raised their hand. They didn't even know what it took to graduate on time. And it was our responsibility to show them where that bar was or is. And that's what 15 to finish is all about. And so as we've continued to do this, one of the things that we realize is that people say, okay, that makes sense. You heard the data from Katie. Everything kind of helps people realize, okay, this is something we should do. But the first response we get is, I don't have a big PR department to create a campaign and all these fancy materials. And so what CCA decided to do was to put it right in your hands and open source. So that video you saw to lead off the session, that is now available to everyone that wants to show it to new students and parents in any way that you feel it's most appropriate. And I really want to acknowledge our Director of Communications, Blake Johnson. He was the one who really said, you know what? Yes, please, give him a round of applause. He said, if you want to do this well, you've got to appeal to student senses. And so we created posters like these that you see. You've seen the video already. We now have a brochure. We have presentations that you can very easily weave into new student orientation. All these things are ready to go for you, and all you have to do is download them at completecollege.org, 15 to finish materials. Everything is open source. Please share it within your states and with your institutions. And this is the exciting part about the 15 to finish work. There are a number of institutions that we didn't even know about that were doing it. We did our CCA campus survey in the early spring, and we saw all of these institutions saying, yeah, I'm launching a 15 to finish campaign based on something they might have heard from Hawaii or a CCA-related event. That was exciting. We already had some states that were scaling that effort, and now I'm pleased to announce that we have 8 additional alliance members that will be scaling 15 to finish within the next year. And so those states are California, the Central Valley Higher Education Consortium, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire. Give them a round of applause, please. And so I'm going to move over to this direction and bring our panelists up to the stage, because the best way to really hear about 15 to finish and early momentum in particular, making sure that we give students that good nudge at the beginning so that they can be successful, is to hear from people that have done it. And so I'd like to introduce our panelists, so please give them a round of applause. So when we talk about 15 to finish, Jim, we're in your home state.
Yes.
So Jim is at Sacramento, at Cal State Sacramento.
Right.
And you have been doing some really good work, and we didn't even know about the work that you were doing. Someone was like, hey, you got to talk to this guy. He's making it happen in California. And so talk to us a little bit about what you have figured out with regard to early momentum and 15 to finish, because I am now hearing that there are a number of other institutions in California that are trying to model their finishing 4 or 15 to finish initiative based on what they've seen from you. So please tell us about it.
Sure. From our perspective, I guess this would be a story about jump-starting momentum. I came to Sacramento State about 11 months ago, and I was brought from New Zealand, where we had been doing some of these type of initiatives over the last 3 or 4 years. And our president, Robert Nelson, basically laid out a story to me that Sacramento State, over the last 30 years, had about an 8 to 10 percentages of students who graduated in 4 years. For him, that was literally a moral imperative, much more than just a learning imperative. And his concern was not letting this just continue on and on. We had developed an enormous amount of energy and positive approaches to looking at programs and processes, but they weren't moving the gauge. And so the question was, what could we do? I guess I would draw from maybe my business colleagues. What could we do to disrupt the marketplace? So with his energy and with a great deal of support from the faculty and students and staff, we literally took our students who were coming in this summer, and as they went through for their orientation, about 4,000 of them, we presented this campaign to them, and it was very much of a campaign about pointing out all of the things that you're very much aware of in terms of the positive effects of finishing in 4. What had happened over time, I think, is that our university had really started to lay the blame, or at least lay the most of the responsibility for finishing 4 on our students, and had really come up with anecdotal information based on that they're not able to finish in a 4-year period because of socioeconomic, cultural emphasis, because of their performance in high school. So we challenged that, and we challenged that to the students as well. And through our campaign and through our orientation and advising, et cetera, we saw a dramatic change. Those students who graduated in this last summer, when they were in their first year, only 17% of them took 15 hours. This group, 65% of them are taking 15 hours, and that's creating an entire new pipeline for how we see our students and how we see their success. In other words, we went to the students with the message, and now the university's catching up to them.
Absolutely. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So when you talk about those dramatic numbers that you see, I mean, I saw Kathy's numbers on the screen a little earlier, and it's that's not out of the ordinary to see with a 15 to finish effort. It's so surprising how many students didn't even know what it took to graduate on time, and we heard that from Bianca. But one of the things that I've heard, and one of the, kind of in demystifying this whole idea of 15 to finish, is that there are some individuals, some of our colleagues, the first thing that you say when you throw out the idea of 15 to finish or early momentum is, well, you don't understand my students. That's if that was a tagline, I would put it in every presentation. But you don't understand my students, or this will never work for my students. So Nia, you are at a small institution, a historically black college. Tell us, what's been your experience with helping students move towards early momentum?
I think that I think that students will rise. They want to graduate in 4 years. They want to follow the path that we set for them. They want direction. So our students want us to tell them what to do. And I was at Georgia State and led retention initiatives there where many people know we have lots of initiatives for 15 to finish and structured schedules. And the question when I came to a small institution was, can that work here? And it can work there, because I found that when we told students what we were trying to accomplish and how the structured schedules and laying things out for them and told their parents, then they fell in line. So it worked really well for us.
Right. So, okay. So when we talk about early momentum, it's not just one thing, like I
No.
showed
Oh, no.
on the slide.
No, so we had to be very strategic. I should have said that. So, it was a different concept. So what we did was I came in with new ideas or different ideas, and just the first thing I tried to do was build momentum around the staff and the faculty and help people understand how this would benefit everybody, because it's not just about the first-year students, and it wasn't just about my office, but if we work together to organize a way we had our academic resources, or our classes organized, or our curriculum grids, all those things together, then everyone benefited. And because we're a small place, sometimes it's more difficult because you have fewer people doing lots of things. And this was a way for us to optimize on the resources we had and be able to give students a more personalized approach, which is something that Dillard prides themselves on, being able to provide students with direct, private, personalized attention.
So if you, on the screen, one of the things that Nia shared were kind of a number of different strategies that were kind of
Right.
woven together. So, when you talk about early momentum, was it one of them? Was it
No.
the 15 to finish? Was it, a combination of things that ended up leading you there? And what ended up happening? I mean, as a result of adding all of these things together.
So we were very intentional. So it wasn't just the learning community, because a lot of things were in place, but they weren't necessarily working in a synergistic way. And so we weren't really optimizing on all the things that we had to do, all the things that we were providing. So what we did was, you can see on this slide, so our summer bridge program, identifying students who did need a little extra support, and maybe the students that we would ordinarily say need to be on a reduced load in the fall semester, which I heard the first panel say, we take the students who have the most going on in their lives and set them up to be there the longest. So we identify those students and we ask them to come in the summertime, so they can take 6 credit hours in the summer. So if they're taking 12 in the fall or 12 in the spring, it doesn't really hurt them, because they'll still have 30. Working with the resource, the academic support units, and trying to get everybody to just talk together and figure out what are the things that our students need, and just collaborating a lot. So no, it was all of those things together, just kind of stacking them. And so our retention rates went up tremendously. So from 2012 to 2013, we went up 16 percentage points. And so, that made me very happy. And so,
And
I
I'm
think
sure
it
there's
made
a lot of happy students.
Yeah,
too.
a lot of happy students, and a lot of our president was happy. And so, and we've seen some momentum that continues, because the other thing that we've done is we've educated students on what it takes to graduate in a certain amount of time. So they're asking lots of questions. And so after they leave the first year experience, if they go to the second year and then their advisor tells them to take 14 credit hours or 13 credit hours, they come back and say, well, shouldn't I be taking 15? Or how am I going to make this up? So now students are being more intentional, and they're taking control of their learning, which is ultimately what we want them to do. We want them to be responsible for their progression.
And I think this is critical. When we started off this idea of what a momentum year looks like, an important part of it is taking the right amount of credits to graduate on time. And so that's the 15 to finish, but it's also about making sure you take the right 15.
Right.
And making sure that you are in a major and making decisions about majors in a very informed way. And so Dale, I want to bring you in on this discussion about purpose, because we've been using this language a lot more. It's not just about making a choice, but making an informed choice and doing it in a purposeful way. So talk to us a little bit about something new that's happening with CCA that you've been assisting us with.
Yeah, so over the last year, both USA Funds in partnership with CCA have really thought about that entry point. As we've heard about it today, and we saw the game changers that were just listed, is that entry point of looking at what are the careers, what is the purpose I'm choosing, what's the pathway? We know from retention research, and I think our friend Jen from Nakeda would say, that retention is really enhanced when people have momentum on a path that they've chosen, a career path. We all know at our institutions and in our systems that students that are in that career-oriented path that they've chosen from the beginning are more likely to be persistent and have momentum continuing. Over the last year, we started a process, again, with 4 states and an independent caucus. So we have New Hampshire, we have Hawaii, we have Tennessee, we have Virginia, and the Houston GPS project, who all were selected to think about the current situation that most of us see is that students walk in the door and don't do much in the field or an exploration of career interest or assessment. If there is some, it's little. And your enrollment management team to your advising team from that first day, if you're going to drop them into a default schedule on a pathway or in a meta major, they may not have explored what are the right careers, opportunities in their region. What does the labor market say? What is the data? What are the opportunities for success on a salary or earnings for my career? And how do you continue that along the way? And so if we continue on and think about the end of their career, the job search and resume building, it's thrown in an urgent, panicked way at the end of one of those students for those, or one advisor for 1,200 students. Originally, we started with 5 kind of objectives and goals to think about informed choice over the pathway and over the time of a student. And really, the group of 5 participants have narrowed it down to the top 3. How do we think about integrating career assessment and counseling immediately as they enter into the institution, before and at enrollment? How do they get advisement in a systemic way across their time at the institution? How is it integrated with real-time labor market information with great software solutions that are out on the market by vendors that are here and elsewhere, but need to be integrated with your enterprise or your student record system in a real way so you can use those products effectively? And lastly, how do you make sure that that career exploration is built in to the curriculum across the time of that student? Not just as a first-year experience course, but throughout. So by the time they've ended their career with you, in 4 years, because they've done 15 to finish and the game changers, they successfully enter their career of choice, and they know the job opportunities, they've entered into networks, and we've put that together. Over the next year, those 5 participating entities, we're going to work on testing, exploring, looking at technology solutions and software solutions that will help with this, and come up with a systemic way and a model that you can take and scale back in your states to come. So there'll be more to come, but we're working hard with those 5 participants over the coming year.
Good. And so, Kathy, to bring you back in on this, you have some compelling data. You've done some great work. I love the story about, going to the event in the storm and learning from Hawaii about this 15 to finish. You're a couple years into this now, and so there are other pieces that lead to early momentum. So we're talking about 15 to finish and helping students make the right choice. What are some other things that you have figured out as a result of starting off with the 15 to finish campaign?
Sure. So we have done a lot. We began, of course, with just a communications campaign, but that then led into degree maps. About a year later, we actually just made a shift this year to banded tuition, which really was a significant disruptive force, I think.
So help people understand that may not be familiar. What is
Sure.
banded tuition?
So historically, students have always paid by the credit. So a student taking 12 credit hours would pay less than a student taking 15 credit hours. And so now we've instituted a flat fee that will cover anywhere between 12 and 18 credits. And we actually, quite honestly, had some pushback from students about that. They were very concerned. Some of them felt that it was unfair for us to expect everyone to enter into this flat tuition zone. But through lots of open dialogue in town halls, I think we've actually gotten to a really good place. We've had some communication campaigns over the summer. For students that weren't enrolled in 15, we actually reminded them that, hey, you can take another class, it won't cost you any more, you could enroll in research credits, take an internship for credit, and there was a great spike in July after that communications campaign. We've also done outreach to parents and family members, and I think that's a really important augmentation to one's communication strategies, just kind of helping them to see how credit hours work and how really students can incur far less debt and enter their careers much faster if they stay on this track.
And so I really like how you talked about banded tuition. One of the things that we hear is, okay, well, it's different at a community college than at a four-year institution. But we're even seeing that in community colleges, you may not see the dramatic spikes in numbers of students taking 15 credit hours, but you're seeing a decrease in the time to degree across the board. You're seeing individuals that are finding that, okay, I may not be able to take 15 credit hours, But if I'm taking 9, I can probably bump that to 12. Or if you're in that sweet spot that Katie shared and you're looking at 12, that's just one more class to get me to graduation, which saves loads of time and money, especially when you think about opportunity costs. Because you aren't just losing money on tuition and fees, you're losing money on lost wages and salary and 401k savings and all of those other things that go along with it, loan debt. So those are important pieces. Please.
I wanted to add something to Kathy with what you said, because you talked about communication to parents, and I think that that is really key to increasing momentum. So having a very strong outreach to your parents, especially on our campus, we have 40% first-generation college students. And when we look at the number of students that we're trying to get to college, there are going to be more and more first-generation college students. And so being able to have a very strong communication plan to helping parents understand why students need to take 15 credit hours and how important it is for them to stay in 15 credit hours, so not just to enroll, but actually to get a schedule that will allow them to keep all of their courses through the semester. I think it's been very helpful, because when students want to withdraw, sometimes we don't want parents to be too involved. We know that. But it's good when the parents are also telling the student, are you going to tutoring? Because you know you need to be in 15 credit hours, because if you're not, you're going to fall behind. So if we can find a nice way to balance that, I think it's really helpful to us, and the parents can then be supportive of our advising with students.
Right. Jim, I want to bring you back into this discussion, because we all know that higher education is not always extremely nimble and quick to change. And so when you talk about, what you're talking about is a culture shift. So, I mean, I'll start with you, Jim, and then anyone else can jump in. What has it done for your campus and students to kind of make this shift to the concept of early momentum?
Even this is the first semester for this group of students that are coming, this cohort that are coming to our university. And already we have a number of our faculty and staff saying it's changed the vibrancy of the university. Along with this, we've opened up more sections in order to accommodate these students as well. We were able to bring open 300 more sections. That's a commitment by everyone in the university. Our president has said very clearly, we're not going to be as concerned about the landscaping as we are of opening up classes, so it's a focus throughout the entire university. And it's had actually immediate dramatic effects as students are on campus longer. They're having more engagement with a number of the people on campus. Advisors as well feel that there's a place to meet and to talk about these type of issues as well for students. Coming to the discussion too about what it means for each of the different cohorts. With our students, we looked at how many students pledged to take the 15 hours. And what was interesting for us, right across ethnicity, socioeconomic, first generation, we saw a similar buy-in to the program as well. So again, it's telling students and their families exactly what are the expectations that are possible, what it means for them, and then watching them step up, and not only step up, but really raise the bar for those that follow after them.
And we're hearing this recurring theme about closing achievement gaps. And so, Kathy, I think you've seen some of that data as well. That shift in culture, what has it done at IUPUI?
Yeah, I would echo some of the same themes. I mean, it's really hard to be on campus only 2 days a week when you're taking 15 credits. It just is. And so when students are here 4 or 5 days a week, it makes it easier for them to engage in on-campus employment. It makes it easier for them to engage in social activities. That said, we're finding that we also need to be relentless, not just in communicating each year to incoming students, but this needs to be incorporated into our advising, onboarding, into new faculty orientation. We've just found that there's a really constant need to not let up on that communication and not let up on using data to continuously improve and also reassure people that this is a good thing to do.
So Dale, when you talk about this idea of, we spent a lot of time talking about new students in this idea of early momentum, but this has to carry out beyond the first year. And so, how do you see this weaving into this Purpose First project?
Right. So I want to get to that, but I also want to get to this thing about underrepresented students and Davis's comment and Tristan's comment earlier today about equity and about economic kind of justice that we want to try to promulgate. And I think that purpose-first notion tied in with these practices, it really is about getting that momentum and career path aligned with that information right up front. And how to integrate it across a student's experience is really the key here. And that's where the best practices starting this fall that these institutions and systems will play with are starting to look at how do you use predictive analytics? How do you use integration in the curriculum and across the curriculum? So that we're talking about our region, our state, the careers or industry that are being focused on with those pathways. And in turn, on the back end, that our career placement offices aren't a separate silo, but they're integrated maybe in a strategic enrollment management office that covers the spectrum and can be bundled together in support of all of the game changers and integrated therein. Again, more to come. They're starting in the fall and more to come next year.
Catch it. So we've seen some slides earlier about the data, and leading with the data to help drive change. So I'm interested in, Nia, you can start with it and anyone else can jump in. What data did you use? What points really helped to make the case? Because one of the things that we've done in the series of 15 to finish materials is we've also created some presentations that you can use at new student orientation or use to make the case to advisors or faculty members. So what data did you use to really reinforce early momentum?
Well, we're using time to completion, really, and the number of hours that students. Well, we did a whole bunch of things. We're looking at the curriculum to see how they're lined up and if they're even mapped out what students can reasonably graduate in 4 years. So do they have 128, 130 hours? So we did some of that too, which I think is important to this conversation. We're looking at the number of hours that students are enrolled in. We're looking at their placement to see what classes we're putting them in and balancing their schedules to make sure that they have schedules that they can manage. So all those things, we're looking at GPA and what predictors those are for us on our campus, because we have some pretty strong data that shows if students have certain GPAs, whether or not they'll progress. So we're using a number of different types of data to figure out how to create the best schedule and experience for our students, because we want them to have a positive experience also, so that momentum can continue.
Absolutely.
I think from my point as well, I would say that if you continue to rely on census data, you'll be waiting another 4 or 5 years to find out whether any of this worked. So moving to predictive analytics is a commitment that we've had at our university as well, to know the real information, to know the correlations, and then to really work with students so that they're having that type of planful experience along the way, and we see the changes by the moment, not by the decade.
Dale and then Kathy.
Our participants in this project have been talking about real-time labor market information correlated with what are our academic programs and the pathways we have. And when they started to look at that, they might have seen that it didn't necessarily go together as well as they thought it did. And so that would be an interesting piece of data to look at.
Kathy?
So all of what you've said, the thing that I would add is that we've actually done really careful analyses of the students who enroll in 15 or more credits but don't complete 15 or more credits within the course of a semester. And we've broken that down by withdrawals versus Ds and Fs. And we've tried to use that information to do a much better job with counseling students. Honestly, the biggest predictor of students not completing is the amount of unmet need. And that's caused us to redouble our efforts to increase need-based aid, but also increase our financial aid or financial counseling for students through our support programs. So I think that's important. I think it's also important for advisors to have access to that information.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you please give our panelists a round of applause?